What is this with this idea of lording it over a woman, lording it over another man, lording it over your house help? What is this with lording it over your kids and not giving them a chance to be free and a chance to think as humans? What is it with this idea of trying to be Lord? Why can't we just all be brothers? Why can't we just all function as one family? Why can't we just live life and be free and be fair and be safe and be sane and be happy and fall in love and be loved in return? Why do we have to exploit the next man? Why do we have to be so brutish? Why do we have to show that animalistic tendency in us that we don't ordinarily need? Why do we have to do everything wrong and nothing right? Why do we have to be that? Why do we have to be that stupid? Why do we have to be that foolish? Why do we have to be the way we are? Why do we have to be this pretentious, thinking we don't know what we want, or trying to run away from the things we want because the things we like and the things we ordinarily get pleasure from and derive satisfaction from are the things ordinarily we should be doing away with to get real meaning in our lives? Why do we want to continually make life miserable for the next person? Because for as long as we continue to tell ourselves that we are so different from the next man, that the continent of Africa is so cut off from the West and we who now live in the West, and that whatever realities they get to face there are to them alone, until we stop telling ourselves that people in North Korea are currently not as free as ordinarily they should be free, if I should even call what they have down there as freedom, so that we continue to tell ourselves that, there are people within the Chinese body that want freedom and they want to break away and they're agitating and they have not really been given attention. And they could be us, because sometimes we think the next person is so different from us without realizing that reality within a space of a second, within a different reality in terms of intercourse, in terms of place of meeting of our parents and place of meetings and place of work experience and circumstances surrounding our bed generally and our existence, the next person could have been us. Trump would have been born in a place like Jamaica, or a place like India, or a place like Nigeria, and Kamala Harris would have come from a place like Kenya, or a place like North Korea, or a place like China. Or myself talking to you would have been a European, as opposed to my current reality as an African. Until we begin to tell ourselves that these possibilities are bound, and for the mere fact that they are not at the moment our reality, doesn't mean that we should make life difficult for the next person. Because in the worst case scenario, where we cannot help people to become the people they ordinarily should be, or to get out of their current situation, we shouldn't make it worse for them. We shouldn't make life difficult for them. A thing we've not learned, a thing we've not accepted, a thing we've constantly lived against, a thing we don't even want to be told not to do. For we constantly do things opposed to reason. We constantly suspend reason in most cases in our lives and in our relationship with people. As such, our level of oppression, our levels of doing things wrong continue to grow, as opposed to we ordinarily getting these things done and done right. And so we'll continue to find people in the world who continue to feel that the world is unfair, the world is unjust. Existence itself is so difficult a thing already to start with, to talk more of we adding to it. And It is not me trying to pull us out of existence and out of the realities of life or out of reality in general. It is me saying, in a world of too much pain, in a world of too much disappointment, in a world of lack of trust amongst brothers and sisters, partners, companions, and the different complexities that is our brains and the different functioning components of our bodies, we should at least try to make life easy. We should at least try to make efforts towards the right path so that we get to also give a soft landing to the next man who is trying to find trust, who is trying to find peace in his life, the woman who is trying to find joy in her life again. Because if we continue down this path, we're just going to spiral down, we're just going to continue in these circles, and we are just going to crash. And it is not going to be beneficial to anybody, not to you, not to me. There's conflict in the world today. If you look left, right, front, back, center, within, you get to see how disarrayed things have become, how sad our reality has become as a people in the 21st century, with all the advancement, with all the technology, with all the inventions we've come to make, and with all the discoveries we've come to unravel as a people, all for things I still sometimes, if not most times, don't really come to understand. From the excesses of capitalism to that of socialism to all the different forms of governance we've come to have across many years in our lives, we get to see how inhuman we've been. We've come to see how we have tried to play politics with almost everything that ordinarily was supposed to mean a lot to us as humans. We've come to toil with lots of institutions that have undermined the foundations upon which life ordinarily should mean and should be in the 21st century. From misinformation to the different gender ideologies and gender wars and gender theories that have come up over the years, to the different ways we get to sell merchandise to ourselves and to different people, we get to see how confusing and how saddening life has become down here. We get to see how we've come to exploit other people, we've come to undermine the importance of other persons just so we could come to be happy, we could come to be fine with the way we get to do things, and so it leaves me thinking, what way forward? Which way should we take? What direction should we take? What should we do when we ordinarily have done everything wrong but nothing right? The answer is there. We should start by doing the things that are ordinarily considered right, the things that are ethically within our reach and our grasp, things that ordinarily will get to benefit humanity, things that are ordinarily going to be within the framework of our lives, things that are going to better not just our lives but the lives of those who live next door, those who live the next border, those who live across that ocean, that river, that house, that town, that city, those who we don't actually know, those we don't know, those we don't see. That's how we have to start. And while there are lots of loopholes with the Kantian categorical imperative, it holds water to a large extent. We should try as much as possible to do to others how we want ourselves to be treated in relation to the general public, how we want every other person to feel, how we want every other person to react to us. But is that the case in our 21st century? Nah, that's actually not the case, because we have lived long enough and have been around here long enough to see that we as humans sometimes claim to be logical beings, but in the long run we fail to use the logic we ordinarily so much lay claim of. We tell ourselves we are Homo sapiens, we are That we are the thinking man, like we are the thinking being. We are men who are supposed to ordinarily do things from a rational perspective. But then, you look at our lives, we look at the decisions we've made, you look at the things we get to make on the daily. They are devoid of rationality. You look at how we fall in love. Most of the times, we just respond to how our brain get to tell us to feel, how our dopamine levels get to rise, how our oxytocin and all these nerve endings and all these hormones get to react, and the fluids within our system, which entirely it's not out of place, because come on, nobody wants to live like a robot. Nobody wants to get to ask himself through different stuff, are you a robot, and all those type of stuff. We have to give ourselves agency to get to think. And I was just talking to my good colleague Joy Deep, and Joy Deep was telling me today, and it's like, said, Obinna, if you really want to live a very happy life and you want to live a very simple life, sometimes you have to put aside logic, because majority of the things we get to do in the 21st century, and not just in the 21st century, in our life as a race, the human race, have been devoid of rationality, have been devoid of logic. We just do things the way we think we ordinarily want to do them. We eat food that ordinarily don't befit our body system, that don't go well with our system, and yet we hope that we're not going to die from such. We make relationships that sometimes are toxic, but then we tell ourselves, for whatsoever reason, probably it's not going to affect us so much. Sometimes we enter relationships that are good, but we know we are ordinarily not supposed to be there, because maybe we're not intentional enough. Maybe we came in with some pretentious attitude or disposition to probably get one thing or the other. That's from a utilitarian perspective, and we know ordinarily we're supposed to be sincere to the next person, because if we aren't sincere to the next person, probably the next time that person meets a chance of being in a relationship that really makes sense, they will not come to do that, because they will remember the experience they had with us, they will remember the life they had with us, and they will just tell themselves, you know what, I don't think I want to be inside this relationship, because I don't think it's actually a thing I should do because of my past experience. And so we most of the time don't get to help ourselves. We know that some of our family members get to behave in ways that ordinarily should be corrected, ordinarily should be either given applause or something, but because of our sentiment, because of we holding ourselves back, because of the withdrawal we get to have within ourselves, we don't do that. We rather tell ourselves that some truths are meant to be kept away from ourselves. Some truths are meant not to be spoken, so that we don't spoil relationships. We live within different governmental structures and governing systems across the world, in different lands, in different places, and different geographical expressions and geographical positionings. And yet, for one reason or the other, either out of fear, we tell ourselves, the most logical thing to do is not to speak up, it's not to speak out, it's to be quiet, it's to be silent, it's not to go and dare the government, because we need to prevent our lives, we need to preserve our life, we need to prevent our demise, we need to protect our interests and the interests of our families and the interests of our loved ones, as opposed to the many disadvantages that might come with such kind of systems. You find this in different examples such as being in a particular political party, being in a particular group, in a particular association, in a particular movement, in a particular front, in a particular school of thought, in a particular way of thinking, a particular way of ideation, and how to move and be and try to navigate life. And so we just try to overlook a whole lot of things. Sometimes we might just be in a different sector, in a different religious body, in a different religious family or religion entirely, to even go to that extent. Sometimes we might just be people from different places, and then our sentiments and our false levels of patriotism get to tell us that we should be quiet. And when it comes to false levels of patriotism, we get to find things like Probably your government is currently sponsoring a particular mayhem or a particular wrongdoing in a particular country, in a particular state, in a particular location against a particular people that you don't find comforting to yourself, or that you ordinarily know are not, is not like comforting to those people, or is not like such a particular idea or particular way of treating the next group of people outside of yourself doesn't really make sense or doesn't really meet the requirement of human rights and all that. But then you keep quiet because you know you are ordinarily meant to be patriotic. Just like the many times the US have been involved in conflicts in different parts of the world. Different times the US have intervened or seen to it that a state like Haiti gets to remain the way it gets to remain, or the many times it has sent its military bases to different countries, places like in different countries and in continents, things like Africa, which ordinarily is not for the good of the people in most of the case. You keep quiet because you know what, probably you have a leaning towards those particular kind of stuff. It might be your family, it might be the family you get to come from, and then you just like look and say, this has been a family legacy. My family is currently going through a hard time, and probably there are some scandals within my family, within my religious sect, within my religion. There are some falsehood being taught here and there, or being believed or being practiced. But then I have to keep quiet because what should I do? What should I say? Should I come out and speak? Should I come out and criticize them and then be looked at as a heretic, to be looked at as a bad guy? Or should I just keep quiet and probably, get this idea of mind your business, leave and let's leave? And the examples continue to go on and on and on and on. And yet we don't have a solution. We don't have a meeting place. And so as long as we continue to look across the other side, as long as we continue to look on the next person across the fence and say, they are so different from us. Their problems, just like Leotoso will get to say, their problems are entirely different from our problems. Their realities are different from our realities, and the way they get to view life and the way they get to do things are entirely different from the way we ordinarily get to do things and the way we ordinarily are. As long as we continue to tell ourselves these particular things, we get to see that our world would continue to crumble day in, day out, in and out, in and out, in and out. For what reason? Because you and I probably would continually look at the other side and tell ourselves that person is so different from me. As such problems, such personality disorders, such difficulties, such challenges, such sufferings, sometimes even the joys and the happiness they get to experience, we get to pull ourselves entirely from it and tell ourselves, they're entirely different. But that's not the case. That's not the case. The case remains that we are more similar than we want to tell ourselves. We are more of a particular breed. We are more of the same species that you can ever think about. We are more of the same category of animals, or whatever you want to put that. We are from the same family. We are from the same species. We share the same gene. We share the same genetic traits across different geographical positionings and across different epochs of our lives. Our similarities are so much the same than we want to admit, that we want to accept. And then we still live in a world where we are so divided, and when things like this type of crisis going on in the Middle East get to happen, we tell ourselves, I don't want to know. I don't want to think about that because it's far off in the Middle East. When we want to talk about the stuff happening in Ukraine, we tell ourselves, what? That's in Ukraine. When we try to look at the realities happening in Sudan, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, in Tanzania, we tell ourselves, we are entirely pulled away from those people. Those conflicts are their own. We want to look at things like Yemen or Yugoslavia, and then we tell ourselves, those people are entirely so different from us, and we are not similar. And sometimes this might look just plausible until it happens that our family members are in such countries, until it happens that our friends are in these type of places, until it happens that we're highly dependent for our happiness from such environments, from such destructions and whatsoever. Until it happens that it is our family members that are actually being killed, that are actually being exploited, that are actually being degraded and turned into third if not fourth class citizens in a world where everybody ordinarily was supposed to be free. In a world where Fran Fanon will get to say, talk about things like the wretches of the earth being around us and being around us to a great deal, to a great extent, and it leaves me asking myself, at what point are we going to retract, and at what point are we going to face our life and try to live squarely and sanely? It starts with you telling yourself that my children have to be brought up right, that my kids have to be catered for, that my family members get to actually know what they're ordinarily meant to do and what they're ordinarily supposed to do, as opposed to what we get to do, as opposed to how we get to raise them, as opposed to how we get to put class, how we get to put race, how we get to put a lot of those particular kind of stuff. In Slovak Žižek's book, Too Late to Awaken, What Lies Ahead When There's No Future, in the very beginning he gets to talk about how he wakes up and how he gets to live life and how he gets to do things, and so in the very introduction where he talks about between future and this thing avenue, he talked about himself as an obsessional neurotic, and he said, as an obsessional neurotic, I regularly wake up a couple of minutes before my alarm clock rings, no matter what time I set it for and no matter what time zone I am in. But it would be wrong to read this idiosyncrasy as a sign that I am fully aware of the need to wake up. It is more that I do it to avoid the traumatic experience of being woken up. Somebody gets to ask himself, why? And Zizek continues, the Apostle Paul characterized his own time in a way that seems to fit our present moment perfectly. Make no mistake about the age we live in. Already it is high time for us to awake out of our sleep. It is high time for us to awake out of our sleep. And most of the times we don't. We just continue to hang on there and hang on there and hang on there, and the longer we get to stay in such position, the more things get to go bad. The longer we get to stay on the wrong side of our train, the more things get to go bad for us and go bad for our existence down here. The longer we get to try to avoid the real issues, the core of our being, the crux of the issues we get to face, the more we swim and swim and swim and swim and head towards the wrong track. So that the last speech of the great dictator by Charlie Chaplin should remain a wake-up call for all of us, so that such a script, well written as far back as the old dispensation of our world, before we start talking about the fall of the Berlin walls and the rise of even such a wall and everything that gets to make up the reality and the history of the modern wars we've been fighting, inherited from the old wars we've fought and the ones our ancestors have got themselves involved in. Before we ever got to such a period, Charlie Chaplin saw into the future and spoke to us.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke, it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
In such a speech, we get to see all our idiosyncrasies brought out to the very forefront of our being, and to the clear side of our vision, and to the clear listening experience of what make up our auditory system, and how we get to interpret and understand things from connections down our ears down to our hearts and our brains, and how we get to interpret them. We get to see that we've not stopped being brutish, we've not stopped being people with machine minds and machine hearts, having machine beings, and getting to see how we wrongly get to live life. We have not come to be a people that are ordinarily moved and geared towards the betterment of the next race. The race in the sense that the continents we've divided ourselves into, and the different classes we've come to fix ourselves. There are exceptions here and there, but sometimes you begin to challenge the motives behind, or the motives behind the acts of kindness and the acts of humanitarian services they get to do. Because in fact and in truth, we don't need humanitarian services in a world where all men and women can ordinarily live freely, can ordinarily function well, can ordinarily have all they get to have In a society, ordinarily they were ordinarily supposed to like function clearly and function well also, so that things like charity organizations and humanitarian societies and NGOs should function and ordinarily should be in place for emergencies and for natural disasters and for catastrophes that get to befall the next group of people, but not as a way and a means of livelihood. So that people back in Africa as a continent should stop looking up to the West to get to provide them aids to get to function. There should be a balance between the table they get to sit on and get to sit in terms of dialoguing for how much money to borrow and how much interest they get to pay, not doing it out of desperation, not doing it out of the only option they have and out of the only way they have to go out of their current situation. Because most of the times that is what we get to see, that is what we get to experience as a people. So that places like Namibia will come to know peace in its true sense and come to have children and bear children that have full dignity without necessarily thinking of the idea of migration, only out of desire and out of curiosity and out of exploring new ways of getting to live and experiencing and meeting new people that they get to do migrations, and not out of a means of survival. How we get to such a world, how we get to such a time, is not what I know how to do. It's something left for the philosophers to ordinarily factor out and get to tell us how we get to do that, but also a thing left for thinkers, a thing left for you and I, because we consider ourselves to be Homo sapiens, and if we consider ourselves to be Homo sapiens, then we ordinarily should be thinking beings, we should be thinking animals, we should be animals that have rationality, and we should ordinarily know how to do, how to live, how to function in our world today. Remember, that is from that it is from that particular perspective we took off the idea that we have done almost everything wrong as opposed to everything right. We have done everything on the wrong direction and little attention paid to things done on the right direction. We have lived our lives and we've embraced our addictions, we've embraced the bad sides of our life. We've come to terms with that. We've come to throw logic and reason aside and yet still lay claim to logic. We have come to accept the hypocrisy of our existence, and how, like Dostoevsky will get to say, look at how you crave, look at how you get to express to the next man the expressions you yourself get to desire to be told. Look at how you get to console the next person and tell them, you know, your life is going to be fine, you know, just a little bit of patience, a little bit of time and a little bit of attention to yourself and a little bit of faith and hope, and then your life becomes better. Things we cannot comfortably tell ourselves, and so we continue to drain and drain and drain, and so you continue to see sometimes psychologists who are fighting demons in their head, trying to offer solace and consolation to their clients just because they cannot give up, just because sometimes it is their job, not necessarily because they have any good intent, because sometimes those are the things they have been programmed and pretentiously so told also to pretentiously give to the next person, to project solutions they themselves would not accept, to project solutions we ourselves ordinarily would not get to accept. And so we continue to see priests and clergymen and spiritual leaders who are perpetually agnostic to the beliefs and the systems they have been brought up and they find themselves and what they get to lead, telling people how to ordinarily get to come to believe such axioms, such beliefs, such traditions, such ways of thinking and ways of going about things, so that you find a philosopher philosophizing and pontificating about things ordinarily such a person doesn't hold dear, save for the fact that such person's profession and such person's association gets to tell such a person that the person has to be either an idealist or or a rationalist or an empiricist, or the different groups of philosophical thinking and ways of going about life that we get to see in our world and in our times today. And so you continue to ask yourself, for how long have we lied to ourselves? For how long have we led our lives devoid of truth? For how long have we told ourselves that, maybe we are just still dreaming? Maybe we're in the matrix. One day we're going to awake to the reality of life. Maybe life ordinarily should be like this. For how long have we told ourselves this? And for how long have we come to accept these musings, these silent and heavy voices in our heads, to the extent whereby we have come to accept our current reality, not as reality, but as reality in the making, so that we've come to alter the very possibility, or prevented the very possibility of our way a generation, either in the present or in the future, should ordinarily would have ordinarily come to look at life and get to experience life, if it's in the present or if it's in the near future. For how long have we resigned our fate and come to tell ourselves that there's no meaning in life? And in as much as we've come to tell ourselves that there's no meaning in life, for how long have men and women put guns to their head and told themselves there's no point of living, there's no afterlife, there's no point, there's no reason to the sufferings we get to face in our daily lives, in the day-to-day course of our existence? And so let me snuff it, let me put it off. For how long have we seen people jump off cliffs? For how long have we seen people thrown off? Have you looked at the next option, the next available alternative, as opposed to the actual stuff you get to tell yourself you ordinarily deserve and ordinarily should be doing? And to break it down further, take for instance a relationship. You are just coming to this particular relationship or situationship to get you just want to get laid, you just want to have fun, you just want to have sex, you just want to catch cruise, as much as your brain have come to interpret cruise to mean toiling with another person's feeling. And yet your inability to say that directly, the very point of dialogue or the very point of first communication, leaves the next person so vulnerable to the reality you are about to put such a person into. Because by the time you must have played all around the gallery and you've beaten around the bush and you've told him or her all the good things and all the things you ordinarily think such a person should hear, and you've gotten the cake you came for, you've gotten the strawberry you needed to extract, you've sucked whatever you want to suck dry, you've come to squeeze whatever you want to squeeze out of the person's life, and whatsoever must have been left of the person's hope in the possibility of love, in the possibility of a life with the next person in truth. When you must have come to do all of this, and then the reality is upon the two of you or the group you find yourself, and you guys now have to part ways, either in peace or in discord or in distortion or by ways of whatever level of discordance that get to emanate, and sometimes heartbreaks that get to come out of this, or cold feelings that people get to feel in such situations. And then the next person is left with the thought of all humans are the same, all guys are the same, all girls are the same. A thing as love is not possible, a thing as trust is not possible, a thing as actually being open to the possibility of life, to the possibility of the ways to get to go and the ways to get to live is not ordinarily possible. And then you find such a person struggling day in, day out, with the reality of coming to terms that actually they are good people who want the best of our interests at heart, and who try to do that on daily basis. But then they're also challenged and are also faced with the fact that there are persons out there who have either been betrayed, who have either had one or two problems to to face in their life in relation to trust, in relation to living well, in relation to the next person, in relation to hope, in relation to peace. And you find almost everybody being so much on guard, so much caught up in their world and trying to safeguard their feelings and trying to safeguard how ordinarily they should get to look at life. And so you find people caught up in this challenge of ordinarily not coming to know what love indeed entails, what love indeed gets to mean for the next person, what love ordinarily should mean for everybody until we realize that our actions get to hurt such people. We are not going to help ourselves, and we are not going to make the much needed progress we're supposed to achieve in our lives down here. And so as we continue to navigate this world, as we continue to find ourselves at different intersections, and as we continue to find ourselves in different situations that get to lead us towards right paths and the possibility of meeting more people and the possibility of getting to change the way we get to look at life and the way we get to respond to life and the way we ordinarily should get to look at the situations we find ourselves. May we tell ourselves in truth that a thing as love is possible, and it's not a thing we are not capable of. A thing as trust is still possible even in our times of self-interest and utilitarianism, where people are looked at as commodities and utilities and amenities to be used as objects other than as subjects in relationships, in friendships, in the world we get to live in, whereby we can tell ourselves that in truth, you and I can live well. You and I can function in peace. You and I can grow. You and I can love. You and I can share. You and I can do all the things we ordinarily ought to do to make the world a better place without actually losing out. Because what is it with the falling of trees? What is it with the degrading of people? What is it with the erasures of different histories and different cultures and different ways of life, important and dear to different people, just to enthrone our ideologies and our ways of thinking? What is this with this idea of trying to get a global society where everybody gets to think as one? What is this with people always going to the United Nations to get to cry for the wrong done to them by the same people they look up to for aids, they look up to for help, they look up to for the possibility of a better life? What is this with people year in, year out coming to the UN, the General Assembly, to give speeches upon speeches without actions taken? What is this with politicians promising people heaven and earth, promising them how to go and how not to go, and tell them all the things they ordinarily want to hear, but yet do nothing to see to it that what they want to hear and actually what they need don't align, so that what they hear negates in direct proportion to what they ordinarily don't need. These ideas are sold, their psychology and their structures and the ways they get to look at life is constructed in ways and given to them and projected upon them to the extent whereby they can't even think for themselves. And we have zombies around, and we championing and lauding it around people. What is this with this idea of lording it over a woman, lording it over another man, lording it over your house help? What is this with lording it over your kids and not giving them a chance to be free and a chance to think as humans? What is it with this idea of trying to be Lord? Why can't we just all be brothers? Why can't we just all function as one family? Why can't we just live life and be free and be fair and be safe and be sane and be happy and fall in love and be loved in return? Why do we have to exploit the next man? Why do we have to be so brutish? Why do we have to show that animalistic tendency in us that we don't ordinarily need? Why do we have to do everything wrong and nothing right? Why do we have to be that? Why do we have to be that stupid? Why do we have to be that foolish? Why do we have to be the way we are? Why do we have to be this pretentious, thinking we don't know what we want, or trying to run away from the things we want because the things we like and the things we ordinarily get pleasure from and derive satisfaction from are the things ordinarily we should be doing away with to get real meaning in our lives? Why do we want to continually make life miserable for the next person? Because for as long as we continue to tell ourselves that we are so different from the next man, that the continent of Africa is so cut off from the West and we who now live in the West, and that whatever realities they get to face there are to them alone, until we stop telling ourselves that people in North Korea are currently not as free as ordinarily they should be free, if I should even call what they have down there as freedom, so that we continue to tell ourselves that, you know, there are people within the Chinese body that want freedom and they want to break away and they're agitating and they have not really been given attention. And they could be us, because sometimes we think the next person is so different from us without realizing that reality within a space of a second, within a different reality in terms of intercourse, in terms of place of meeting of our parents and place of meetings and place of work experience and circumstances surrounding our bed generally and our existence, the next person could have been us. Trump would have been born in a place like Jamaica, or a place like India, or a place like Nigeria, and Kamala Harris would have come from a place like Kenya, or a place like North Korea, or a place like China, or myself talking to you would have been a European, as opposed to my current reality as an African. Until we begin to tell ourselves that these possibilities are bound, and for the mere fact that they are not at the moment our reality doesn't mean that we should make life difficult for the next person. Because in the worst case scenario, where we cannot help people to become the people they ordinarily should be, or to get out of their current situation, we shouldn't make it worse for them. We shouldn't make life difficult for them. A thing we've not learned, a thing we've not accepted, a thing we've constantly lived against, a thing we don't even want to be told not to do. For we constantly do things opposed to reason. We constantly suspend reason in most cases in our lives and in our relationship with people. As such, our level of oppression, our levels of doing things wrong continue to grow, as opposed to we ordinarily getting these things done and done right. And so we'll continue to find people in the world who will continue to feel that the world is unfair, the world is unjust. Existence itself is so difficult a thing already to start with, to talk more of we adding to it. And it is not me trying to pull us out of existence and out of the realities of life, or out of reality in general. It is me saying, in a world of too much pain, in a world of too much disappointment, in a world of lack of trust amongst brothers and sisters, partners, companions, and the different complexities that is our brains and the different functioning components of our bodies. We should at least try to make life easy. We should at least try to make efforts towards the right path so that we get to also give a soft landing to the next man who is trying to find trust, who is trying to find peace in his life, the woman who is trying to find joy in her life again. Because if we continue down this path, we're just going to spiral down, we're just going to continue in these circles, and we are just going to crash. And it is not going to be beneficial to anybody, not to you, not to me. And we cannot promise a generation coming before us and our children yet unborn of a sensitive future and a good world, a place where they could ordinarily make things work for them. If we continue with the kind of geopolitics we get to play and the local politics we get to play around our areas and in our lives and in the lives of those we claim to love and those we claim to meet, because we would just come to betray what the future ordinarily should be. And that tells you the fear most persons have actually in putting to bed, in actually bringing a new family together, and actually bringing new life, because they look at the level of sorrow and the level of shame and the level of pain and the level of insincerity and the level of indifference and the level of gap that is and that is between the classes of people, and they're just like, for what reason should I bring forth kids into a world that has lost its mind, into a world that has no soul, into a world that has become devoid of morality and the right ethics to go by? And most of the time, you can't really blame them, because you and I have failed ourselves. You and I have not put up the best version of what we ordinarily can become. I am Biringkpa in the Mecca. This is Boring Conversations. If you do like this video, please drop a comment, please share with your family members, like, and tell the next person to tell the next person that there is a brother who talks about boring stuff. Not boring in the real sense, but things not really explored. See you next time.